Hello everyone, Kier here, and welcome to the InfiNOT podcast. I'm focused on the casual nature of the game, and each week I discuss the new patch, the new card, and my feelings on the game. Let's hop into it. So I apologize for the late episode. I have been dealing with some sickness, and it's still not quite over yet. Just a friendly reminder to see your doctor every once in a while. Enough about me. Let's talk about the new stuff that's happening this week, which includes a new patch, which I'm going to go over first as it sort of sets up for our next two cards, which are Agamotto and Eson. And let's just hop into it. So with this new patch that dropped on March 4th, series drops came in, and we covered those previously, so I won't retread the same stuff, but really great to see. I think that there are some slam dunks in here, and yeah, really happy to see some stuff drop. Next up is an introduction to skill cards, which, according to, the devs themselves, skills are a new type of card. They don't have power, and they are banished or gone forever after taking effect. That allows them to cost less energy than analogous character cards, as well as leaving extra card slots and locations to enable plays like triggering Hope Summers additional times. They also have an FAQ at the end, but I'm going to be sticking to the basics for this. So banished cards are not destroyed, they're not discarded, and they have a separate pool that you can look now to see in that section on your opponent's profile. When you click on that, there's now a banished area. They work pretty strangely, and I'm still figuring out all the kinks for myself. Like, if you play it into Altar of Death, I don't think you get the energy because it's not actually destroyed. It gets banished before that happens. It's the same thing for when you try to use it on a Negasonic Teenage Warhead, and that doesn't work either. It doesn't accept the trigger. There are other things that do accept the trigger, like if it interacts with its on reveal or something like that. So, really interesting. This also sort of leads into their new tooltips thing. If you don't know, when you click on a card and it has some sort of keyword, you can now click on the question mark next to the card, and it'll tell you what exactly that means. So this allows them to change some of their wording and make things a little more clear. Like, they used to have to say, after each turn, blah, 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 but now they can say, end of turn, colon. There's no functional difference. It's about the same amount of words, but it does allow for a quicker communication of ideas, and that will affect things in the future. And they also created a new distinction that now cares about created cards. They used to have to say cards that didn't start in your deck, but there's a big difference in that now it's only going to impact cards that were in an either player's starting deck. It means that, now cards that would have counted a Green Goblin don't count, but will still count cards that were created at the start of the game, like the Infinity Stones from Thanos, right? So there's a little push and pull, but the basic idea is they're trying to clarify some things. This sort of reminds me of when they had to change the uppercase and lowercase versions of cost on cards, right? That sort of distinction helped clarify things. So, yeah, really interesting. I like all of these changes, frankly. A couple of other things in the patch notes for this is they sped up the VFX of Sebastian Shaw in Doom 2099, and thank God. The Doom 2099 upgrade is so much better. I don't have to sit for 30 seconds waiting for all the Doombots to update. It's much quicker now, so that's awesome. And the other cards here have received minor changes, but I'll go ahead and go over them. So Yondu used to say that he destroys the card that costs the least in your opponent's deck, and now it's banish. And there's a really good reason for this with the upcoming cards. But the basic idea of this is it makes him a card that you can get early that tells you about the banish, right? Because they don't want to just lock it to higher series cards. This is a card that you can get pretty early on, and it sort of introduces players to the banish mechanic. And again, it changes the way that it interacts with other cards. In particular, there are cards that are coming out that are going to count, how much power is destroyed, so it kind of matters. And then these other cards have all been changed to say your created cards instead of cards that didn't start in your deck. So that's Gorgon, King Eitri, Quinjet, and Mockingbird. So all of those have now been updated to say your created cards. They also updated a lot of cards to say end of turn. And I'll quickly go over that. It's Sunspot, Hydra Bob, Adam Warlock, Havoc, Athena, Bruce Banner, Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, Marvel Boy, Makari, Doom 2099, Atuma, Black Cat, Red Hulk, Evolved Misty Knight, Evolved Cyclops, and Evolved Hulk. So now all of those cards just say end of turn, and whatever their end of turn ability is. So they don't have to use that old phrasing. And it should be noted that a couple of locations were also changed. We don't have to go over that here. But that's the TLDR, is this patch introduced a lot of different things that sort of switch up the language of the game. And then we got a nice little upgrade to, or I guess side grade to Yondu. So yeah, patch notes, really cool. I like all the changes. I'm all for more clarity in the game. The animation updates were good, and the series drops are great. So yeah, stellar patch. I really like it. Now let's talk about the Season Pass card of the Prehistoric Avengers, Agamotto. Agamotto is a 5/10 that says game start, shuffle 4 Ancient Arcana into your deck, and I'll go over those really quickly. Temporal Manipulation is a 1, because again, these are skills. Remember, we just talked about those. They don't have power, so it costs 1, and it says, on reveal, give Agamotto +3 power. Put him into your hand if he's not in play, and then banish this. And it's interesting the wording they chose. They said, put him into your hand if he's not in play. I've seen it happen, guys. If he gets Shang-Chi'd, if he gets discarded, if you lose him to Weird Worlds, there's like a lot of instances where you might not have him in your hand. He gets put into your hand. It works, which makes this kind of weird in a lot of decks, and it's kind of surprising. Like, you wouldn't think that it would be that liberal with the usage of the words, but it is. It's really cool. And obviously turning Agamotto into a 5/13 is really good. That's one more than Gamora. Of course, you're investing in energy for it, but there are some niche circumstances where, like, you could get some extra value off of this by putting into a Bar Sinister or something like that, in which case the +3 is insane, right? So, not too shabby at all. And obviously the deck thinning is great too. Next up is Winds of Watum, and this is a 2-cost skill that says, on reveal, afflict an enemy card here with -5 power and move it right. Banish this. This is insanely strong. Even just straight up playing it on turn 2 on like a 1-cost card can give them what is essentially a goblin. You don't have any board space used, and you can control where their card goes. This can also be extremely clutch on a couple of different locations. And if your opponent is super confident in winning, you can sometimes win a 50-50 by being like, you know what, if I move the big card here, I just win, because I have the other 2 lanes. I suspect that this is going to be nerfed in the future. I could see this going to afflict with -3 power or something, because then, it's not like destroying those cards. It's not cutting a 10 power card in half. It's, doing a little less than that. Obviously, that would make this card worse, but it is something to think about. Next up is a 3-cost skill that's Bolts of Balthak. It says, on reveal, next turn, you get +4 energy. Banish this. I've been hearing a lot of really misconstrued takes on this card. People are like, well, you're spending 3 energy to get 4 energy next turn. That doesn't sound too great. That's not how energy works in Marvel Snap, right? The context in which you get the energy matters. Like, you're not saying, oh, well, I paid 4 in order to get Wiccan out. And so that means he's only giving me +2. That's not really worth it. That's not what ramp cards do, right? The idea with this is that you play this on, or as early as turn 3, and that means on turn 4, you have 7 energy that you can spend all right then, which means you can get out a big card, or a big card and a little card, which you wouldn't be able to do normally with your limited energy. The same goes by playing it on a later turn. If you play it on turn 5, then on turn 6, you're going to have 10 energy, which means that you can get out, a 6-drop and a 4-drop all in one turn while playing a 2-drop the previous turn, which could have been Winds of Atum, right? Like, you're going to get more cards out on the board almost always, unless your curve doesn't fulfill that, in which case you're ramping something out, right? So, it's good. Especially if you combo it with something like Eson, which we'll talk about soon. So yeah, really good. I think it's underrated, in fact, and I guess we'll talk more about how I rate each of these in a moment. I got a little bit ahead of myself. Let's talk about Images of Icon, which is a 4-cost skill that says, on reveal, transform your other cards here into copies of the highest power one, banish this. And I was shocked to see people rating this low before it came out. This just seemed so good to me. And it really is. Like, being able to, take a lane with a crossbones in it and suddenly make it a 30 power lane or something is nuts. It's crazy. Yeah, it has limitations, don't get me wrong. But doing something as simple as, like, playing a Zabu in a lane, getting a Dr. Doom out with Bolts of Balthak, and then using Images of Icon, you've spread a crap ton of power on the board. So yeah, I think that this is really good. And I guess if I'm rating these, I would personally say, I think Temporal Manipulation is cool, it's fine, but it's probably at the bottom. Bolts of Balthak is next. Winds of Atum is probably the second best. It has won me games by itself. And Images of Icon, I think, is the best. There's not always going to be a circumstance where you can use it, like it might be awkward, or the benefit you'd be getting out of it is not very high. But a lot of the time, you're getting over 15 in stats off of a 4-cost, right? Most of the time when you play this, so yeah, it's incredibly good. And to talk about the deck that I've been playing in, or with Agamotto, I call it Strawberry Oatmeal. If you've been listening for a while, I've been playing a good cards deck called Oatmeal, and I just felt like Agamotto was a really sweet inclusion, so I named it Strawberry Oatmeal, and I just slapped him in there. Admittedly, I'm not too sure about 2 of the cards in here. I might think about swapping them out, but it's Nebula, Hydra Bob, Jeff, Hawkeye Kate Bishop, Speed, Copycat, Shang-Chi, Jessica Jones, Scarlet Spider, Iron Man, Agamotto, and Goliath. And the things that I learned about just slapping Agamotto in this deck is, first of all, I replaced Magneto, because the power here on Agamotto is good enough that I feel like the disruption from Magneto isn't as necessary. And the things that this deck can do is disgusting. 2 of my favorite plays are with Images of Icon. The first one is you put some Hawkeye Kate Bishop arrows in the same lane as Speed, and then you Images of Icon. Because the Speed is going to reach, 8 or 9 power in this deck with the consistent curve, and that means that you get 3 9-power cards, which is just under the range of Shang-Chi, but is still really hard to beat. Really love that. And then Scarlet Spider in here is just a fantastic little play, because even if you just get 2 of them out on the board, you've just made a Doctor Doom play, right? You're putting out so many of the Scarlet Spiders. And it gets even better when you get 3. It really helps to fill out the board, and it's tough for an opponent to beat. So, yeah. Both of those cards are superstars. Jeff can also move in order to get into a lane for Images of Icon. And the other cards in here are just good cards, right? So, like, getting an Iron Man on your Agamotto with a Bolt of Balthak is great. It's just awesome. And Copycat can sometimes just swing lanes by herself. Like, this deck does a little bit of everything, but having Agamotto in here really elevates the play lines and can get you a ton more wins. Right now, I'm running a 68% win rate with this deck. And yeah, that's crazy. And some of those were bot games, so take it with a grain of salt. But it's gotten me all the way up to close to 90 on the ladder. And you know me, I don't always get there. So, I mean, Agamotto has got to be pretty good. Is he nerf worthy? I don't know. Like, he is good, for sure. But, I mean, if you play a negative deck, you're going to always beat him. Right, because the decks that want to play Agamotto are probably good cards decks, and I don't want to be the arbiter of, like, I wouldn't take my word as gospel, but I'd be willing to bet that the best decks with Agamotto are ones that are flexible, because trying to make an entire strategy based off of one of his skills is going to be pretty tough, right? So I think good card lists are the ones that are going to get the most value from him, and for that reason, it's going to be pretty mid-range. Like, high-end decks like Hela or Negative or Tribunal, right? Like, unless you have the specific tech in your deck, it's gonna be tough to beat. So, personally, I don't see the argument that he's broken. I think he does need a couple of adjustments, though, right? Like, I think Winds of Watum could probably need adjusted, and I don't know, maybe they need to make Images of Icon like a 5 or 6 cost card. I don't know. I like where it's at right now, but it's hard to deny that, it's strong. I mean, it's a Wayne winner. It's a lane winner by itself. So, yeah. That's what I think about Agamotto. 5 out of 5 release. Really stellar card. I personally love it. And I'm going to briefly talk about Eson here because I feel like, you guys probably know what the decks he goes in. Eson's a 6/10 that says, end of turn, put a created card from your hand here. And yeah, this is like a lot of cards we've seen before, including Red Wing, right? The idea of, like, you throw him down on 6, you hope to get something big, he wins the lane. Or you try to ramp him out, and he gets a lot of things that you hope are big and win the lane. Now, this does have some cool interactions with a couple of cards, like getting a demon from the hood, or, getting the ebony blade from Black Knight. Like, those are cool interactions, but the typical thing you're going to see this in is Arishem, probably. Maybe throw in, like, a Nick Fury sort of deal, and yeah. I think the card is good. You're almost always going to get your money worth. Even if you get a 4-power card, right? You've essentially just played a Giganto wherever you wanted it. So, like, its floor is pretty high, I'd say. Starting at a 6/10 means that, he's already putting up a pretty good number, and you're just elevating that. So, yeah. That I would say is a 4 out of 5 release. I feel like the decks you're going to see him in are obviously contextual based off of, are you creating cards? But, the stats are just straight up good. So, yeah, 4 out of 5 for that. 5 out of 5 for Agamotto. We covered the patch. And, yeah, I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I hope I don't sound too awful in the recording. And if there's one thing that you can remember, it's that I'm InfiNOT. Thanks for listening.